how to use ChatGPT for your business. By the time you're done watching this video today, whether you have 1 employee or 1,000, you're going to learn some creative things that you can do using ChatGPT to make your business run better. First, we're going to discover what ChatGPT actually is before we start using it, and you're even going to talk about what it isn't. Also, you're going to uncover how you can use it whether you're a solopreneur or fairly not technical, or if you have a large organization made up of many different departments and individuals. Let's get started. First, we have to understand what ChatGPT is before we use it, because if we don't understand what something is and is not, it could actually be quite dangerous to us. So in this case, ChatGPT is something called Generative AI, or Generative Artificial Intelligence. Artificial intelligence is simply an algorithm that performs and gives outputs that are almost on the human level of intelligence, but by this time they're typically smarter than us. Generative AI specifically is a very small branch of AI in which an algorithm gives out information or output that looks like a human created it. So maybe it looks like it's writing an article, maybe it looks like it created a picture or a video, but no matter what, it's all generative AI and not a human. Basically, generative AI works on being programmed with a great deal of information, taking that information that it has. When you ask it a question or you give it a prompt, the next thing it does is it tries to think in terms of patterns. What are you most likely to want? And so it's kind of like advanced math. And so it's not intelligent in the sense of that we think of humans. It doesn't have a conscience. We haven't reached the singularity where machines have surpassed humans in terms of its intelligence, but it does look like it's putting out something similar to what humans do. Now, when we talk about AI, or generative AI specifically, it's only as good as the information it's trained on. So for instance, if you have an obscure book that you loved as a child, if generative AI tools like ChatGPT haven't been trained on that book, if you ask it questions about its book, it's not going to be able to help you. But here's the interesting thing. It may or may not tell you that it can't help you. Generative AI, including those like ChatGPT, they do something called hallucinate. They give out hallucinations. If you don't know what a hallucination is, I want you to think back to a super smart friend you have that's brilliant, but when they don't know the answer to something, rather than say they don't know, they actually kind of make up something that sounds really, really good. That's what ChatGPT does. And so it might actually tell you that it knows about a book or it knows about a thing, and it'll give you all this information, and on paper it looks great. But if you go to cross-reference or research what it's telling you, it's wrong, 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 just like that friend. In fact, we had a case in the United States where an attorney used ChatGPT to actually submit paperwork to the court and got into a lot of trouble because they didn't fact check it. And ChatGPT, although what it created was beautiful, actually referenced a case that didn't exist. It hallucinated. So we have to understand that ChatGPT does have its limitations. It will hallucinate if it doesn't know something, so we can't depend on it to be 100% accurate. And it's only as good as the information that it's trained on. It's only trained on a very teeny, less than 1% of the internet. And so it's not all knowing. It doesn't have access to all information. So before we get even further into how you can use ChatGPT, now we have a basic understanding of what it is. But first, I have to issue you a couple of warnings. We want to make sure that you're safe in using this. In the same way that when you teach a child how to use a knife, you tell them what not to do. Don't put your hand under the blade. You kind of give them instructions. I want to keep you from getting in trouble. So here's a warning. Number 1, do not put sensitive information in ChatGPT. We don't want to train ChatGPT on your company's secrets, okay? Or any personal information that you would not want widely available on the internet. It's not going on the internet, but it's a similar type of tool in that once the information goes out, it could go a lot of different places. We have minimal control. So don't put any type of trade secrets or sensitive information into ChatGPT. There's other technology or ways that you can leverage it so that you have a little bit more of a restricted environment, but we don't want you to put it in general ChatGPT. That's number 1. And in fact, if you're wondering about the dangers of putting information into generative AI, I remember a few months ago, Google has a tool called Bard. I'm actually an official Bard tester. Bard is a competitor of ChatGPT. Works slightly different, has slightly different uses, but they're very similar. And one of the funnier things that I saw was when Google was instructing their people to be very careful in using Bard, if at all. If that doesn't tell you what you need to know about putting in sensitive information, I don't know what will. So again, be very careful about what you put in there. The second warning that I want to give you, I don't know if you remember, maybe about 4 years ago, companies started cracking down on individuals that were using unlicensed image or who hadn't purchased the license to use an image in their blog or in any type of online resource. There were companies that were hired or law firms that were hired to literally identify all the people or the perpetrators who had used these images without it being properly licensed, and they were actually sued or made to pay a certain fine, right? So I want you to think about IP when it comes to ChatGPT and other types of generative AI. Now, I know a little bit about this because I recently returned from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, talking to all the top IP, intellectual property lawyers, the people in government around this topic in Latin America. And so one of the challenges that we have with generative AI is we're playing the game as the rules are being written. In other words, in terms of ownership, it's still a little fuzzy in the US and around the entire world on who should own what. And just because we define it one way now doesn't mean a few months from now it might not look different. So I'll give an example about ownership. Think about a tool like ChatGPT. You might prompt it and say, write a 200-word article about the dangers of cheese pizza, whatever that is, right? So ChatGPT will do it. It will write the whole article. But if you post it as is, here's the question. Who actually owns that? Whose intellectual property is that? Is it ChatGPT's? Is it the developers who created the technology? Is it you, the person who put in the prompt? Or is it the hundreds of thousands of resources that went into training the model, all the authors whose articles went into that, who allowed it to be able to use pattern recognition to kick out a new article for you? Who owns that work? And is it even a percentage ownership to different people? So again, you might have an answer right now. And if you do have an answer, feel free to put it in the comments. I'm curious to know, who do you think owns the IP when any type of generative AI, ChatGPT, or even some of the ones that kick out images or videos, who owns that IP? What's your opinion? Now, the interesting thing is no matter who owns it or who we think owns it, the definitions of who owns it can change in the future. So I say all that to say, be very careful in how you're using whatever ChatGPT kicks out to you, because if you're publishing it in some way or representing it as your own intellectual property, something that you've authored, that can get a little sticky. Now, OpenAI, the company that owns ChatGPT, they do actually have their own preferences on how you cite that something was generated using ChatGPT. And you can look that up. That's not a problem. But again, just because OpenAI says something doesn't mean that's what the law says, and it doesn't even mean that's what the law is going to say a year, 2 years from now. So I just want you to protect yourself and be aware. The next question is, are you going to use ChatGPT directly, or are you going to use an API? If you're a small business or if you're a solopreneur, you're probably going to get into ChatGPT and just use it as is. And even if you're a larger firm, depending on what you're doing, there are times when you would use that as well. But leveraging an API allows you to take ChatGPT and combine it with other technologies to create these incredible systems that can do so much more. So for instance, if you combined ChatGPT using an API with another program that maybe helps with creating scripts for movies, or that's a weather app and asks you to create some type of, full day itinerary based on weather in 3 different cities you're driving to, you can do more with it. So the larger your organization, the more likely you are to use an API. If you are part of a larger organization, you probably have a pretty big tech stack. And so whatever company that you're leveraging that's providing you with the technology, they might be reselling from Microsoft or Amazon and also helping you develop your own technology. They would be the ones you would talk to about how to better integrate things like ChatGPT with your technology. And you can do some pretty cool things with it using an API. So let's dive a little bit further into how you can use ChatGPT along with an API. Some of the things you can do is create a customer service chatbot. So using ChatGPT and using some other piece of technology and training it only on your internal information. So not opening it up to the whole world where it's pulling from all the things it was trained on, but training it specifically on your most frequently asked questions and things like that allows you to create an extremely intelligent chatbot for your organization. You can also use it to create multilingual support. Many organizations operate in different territories, but being able to ask it a question in one language and being able to have it kick back answers in another, or maybe your primary language isn't the primary language of the company's employees, but because it's trained on the data and trained on languages, it can also answer you in a variety of different languages. I think we can all see the value of that. You can also use it to give personalized recommendations to your clients. So if you think about a client that maybe they have a pretty unique technology stack and they're needing some additional tools from you, but they're not sure where to go, or maybe you're a solopreneur that's a stylist, you can use ChatGPT along with an API and another piece of technology to create personalized recommendations even when you're asleep, even when your company is in its off hours. You can also use ChatGPT with an API for advanced data analytics. A lot of larger organizations are starting to use it for that. And even for customer as well as employee onboarding. There's many different ways we can use ChatGPT connected to other pieces of technology. Now let's say that you want to keep this simple. Maybe you just want to go on ChatGPT today and start using it and figuring out what can you do to make your business better. Maybe you're using it more as a solopreneur, or if you work for another organization, just figuring out how you can use it in your particular role. Maybe you're not looking for company-wide information. Well, there's some pretty cool things that you can do with it. One of my favorite things is information summaries. Have you ever seen a large article and you just didn't have time to read it? And I'm not talking about being mentally lazy. You just might have a busy day and you're just like, ooh, I don't have time to spend 15 minutes reading this. I wish I could get the highlights. What I like to do is I copy the whole article, I put it in ChatGPT, and I might say, summarize this in 10 bullet points. And then I get the main points. The good thing about it is it allows you to save time. But understand that you could still be missing key pieces of information. But it's really no different than asking another human to summarize information for you. They're taking out the biggest pieces, the biggest nuggets you need to know, and leaving out some of the smaller details. And so for non-essential information, I find that ChatGPT is excellent for summaries. Sometimes my team has calls with clients, and it's not about the particular content of my presentations that I'm doing for them, but it's just kind of like an outline of other things that I need to know. If my team members record the conversation using Otter or some other type of information, they send me the transcript. I'm gonna be honest with you, if I'm really, really busy, I'm not gonna read a transcript of a 60-minute conversation. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT for 20 bullet points or to summarize it in X words or less. And then I get a nice quick summary and I keep moving. One of the other things you can use ChatGPT for is outline creations. So let's say that you're creating a project or a book or whatever else you're doing in your job. I need to create a presentation on this thing, or I need to create a project based on this thing. These are the elements that you need to know have to be included. How would you outline this information in 6 points? Or how would you outline this so that it turns into a 2-hour presentation or a 1-hour sales presentation? And oftentimes ChatGPT can be excellent at helping you create an outline. I'm not suggesting that you use it to help you fill in all the content of the outline or that you don't even tweak the outline, but oftentimes it gives us some really great places to start so that we get our juices flowing in our brains. You can also use ChatGPT for brainstorming, and you can even use it for explanations. So maybe there's some type of new technology or new development, or maybe someone from another department is communicating something with you and you're not understanding. Assuming that it's not sensitive information and it wouldn't go against any policies to put this in there, I simply ask ChatGPT to explain whatever this thing is, I'll paste it in there, explain this to me like I'm a 12-year-old, and then watch the magic happen. It'll help you understand any concept you can think of. In addition to that, obviously ChatGPT is being used to create content. It's being used to create marketing materials for SEO, search engine optimization ideas. You can use it to generate all kinds of content as well, but I wanted to give you some of the ways where it's not really being talked about as much that everyday people can use it. So not everyone needs to generate content, but most of us are in a position at some point in time where we kind of need information more summarized because we don't have enough time in the day. Here's what we know. ChatGPT is only going to get smarter and smarter over time. Right now, it's still a baby. It's at its infancy. And what it can create is pretty powerful. So if we want to talk about being prepared for the future, what you're going to notice is in the description of this video, there's a link to download the Future Ready Playbook. I know that you're already future-minded because you're curious about ChatGPT and how to use it more efficiently. Well, this playbook is also going to help you in being more strategic in how you plan for the future, whether we're talking about your personal, professional, or if you're a business owner, your business goals as well. So take a moment and download it today.